Previously, we've been working with solving these quadratic equations, and so far we've solved them by graphing, we've solved them a little bit with factoring, and then previous lesson we looked at solving them using this thing called the quadratic formula. We call it the quadomatic, where you filled in some different shapes and then you stuck them into this template to get an answer. Now, as we talked about the other day, that's really called the quadratic formula, and this is on your reference sheet. In fact, this is exactly what it looks like on your reference sheet. Those pieces we did the other day are actually right here. There's your circle, negative b. There is the rectangle, b squared minus 4ac. And down here at the bottom, that's where the trapezoid's at, that 2a. And so we were just using this, just kind of had a different way to represent those answers. So we're going to kind of advance from this a little bit today and get away from the shapes, but still be using that quadratic formula to solve some problems. Okay, so here's our first one, x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals 0. So just like the other day, we want to start by figuring out our values for a, b, and c. So what would your values for a, for b, and for c be in this problem? Okay, a is 1, b is negative 4, and c is 3. Okay, now we're going to prepare our three pieces. So just like the other day, it's the same thing, it just looks a little bit different because we don't have the shapes. So what would the first piece be? What would negative b be in this problem? Okay, since b is negative 4, we're going to make the opposite of that, so we're going to make that positive 4. Okay, the second piece is b squared minus 4ac. So here's our b, so we're going to square that. Negative 4 squared, negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 3. So 16 minus 4 times 1 times 3, and if you evaluate that, you get 4. Okay, and then finally the last piece is 2a. So again, come back over here and look. A is 1, so 2a would just be 2. Now, in our quadomatic, we had a circle and a square and a trapezoid. But here it's just the same thing. It's just going to be the first piece, which is 4, plus the square root of the second piece, which is also 4 in this case, divided by the third piece, which is 2. Now the second time we do it, it's the same thing, except it's got a minus sign. So it's going to be the first piece minus the square root of the second piece divided by the third piece. Alright, so go ahead and simplify each one of those, and let's see what our answers are. Now don't forget that the square root of 4 is equal to 2. Okay, so then when we do the first one, it's going to be 4 plus 2, which is 6, and then 6 divided by 2 gives you the answer of 3. For the second one, it's 4 minus 2, which is 2. 2 divided by 2 gives you the answer of 1. So our two answers are 3 and 1. If we were to take those values, if we wanted to check our work here, we could plug them back into the original problem and we should get 0 for an answer. So let's try that with 3 real quick. 3 squared, 9, minus 4 times 3, 12. 9 minus 12 plus 3 gives you 0. Same thing with 1. 1 minus 4 plus 3 is equal to 0. And so when we plug those back in, they work. Same thing, if we had graphed this equation, this is where they would have crossed the x-axis at. Remember, we get two answers when we look at those graphs. Those would be those two answers. Okay, let's try that with the next problem. Negative 2x squared plus 3x plus 5. So go ahead and start and identify your values for a, b, and c. A is negative 2, b is 3, and c is 5. Alright, now let's prepare our three pieces. So the first piece is negative b. What's your value for that? Should be negative 3. Since b is 3, negative b would be negative 3. Okay, now find your value for b squared minus 4ac. Okay, 3 squared is 9, so we've got 9 minus 4 times negative 2 times 5. Okay, and so if we find the value for that, what we end up with is 49. And for 2a, since a is negative 2, 2 times negative 2 makes that negative 4. Alright, so let's go ahead and plug this now into this template. So remember, it's the first piece plus the square root of the second piece divided by the third piece. So our first piece was negative 3 plus the square root of the second piece, so the square root of 49, divided by negative 4. And the second time it's the same thing, but we put a minus sign in there. So it's negative 3 minus the square root of 49 divided by negative 4. Alright, so let's evaluate each one of those, and what do you get for your two answers? Okay, don't forget the square root of 49 is equal to 7. So the first time through, we're going to take negative 3 plus 7, which is 4, and then 4 divided by negative 4 is negative 1. The next time through, negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10. Negative 10 divided by negative 4 would simplify to 5 over 2, but I would also be okay if you just gave me the decimal there, which is 2.5. All right, try the next one here. See if we can work through that one. So start by finding your values for A, B, and C. A equals 1, B equals 9, C equals negative 22. Okay, now find your values for each of those three pieces. Negative B is negative 9. B squared minus 4AC is going to be 81 minus 4 times 1, that's 22, times negative 22, and that gives you 169. And then 2A is just going to be 2. All right, so now plug them into these two boxes and write down what you would have. All right, so you should have negative 9 plus the square root of 169 divided by 2, and negative 9 minus the square root of 169 divided by 2. Okay, make sure you find the square root of 169. Use your calculator if you need to. What's the square root of 169? All right, it's 13. So take negative 9 plus 13 divided by 2 and negative 9 minus 13 divided by 2. What are your two answers going to be? All right, so your first time through, negative 9 plus 13 is 4, so 4 divided by 2 is 2. Second time through, negative 9 minus 13 is negative 22. Negative 22 divided by 2 is negative 11. Now everything we've done so far, the square roots have come out to be whole numbers when you grab your calculator if you had to do them on your calculator. But that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes those square roots aren't going to come out to be whole numbers. And so the next one, the last one we're going to do here is an example of that. All right, so it starts off the same way as the rest of them do. So go ahead and write down your values for A, B, and C. A is 1, B is 1, and C is negative 7. All right, so now prepare your three pieces here. So what would negative B, B squared minus 4AC, and 2A? Find each one of those. All right, negative B would be negative 1. B squared minus 4AC, that's going to be 1 squared, so that's still 1, minus 4 times 1 times negative 7. Okay, so this actually works out this time to be 29. Okay, and then 2A gives you the answer of 2. All right, so now plug them into your two spots. So we got negative 1 plus the square root of 29 divided by 2, and negative 1 minus the square root of 29 divided by 2. All right, so you're going to need to figure out what the square root of 29 is on your calculator, and it's not a whole number. If you work it out, it works out to be 5.84. So we're going to take and use 5.84 when we simplify this. So the first time through, we're going to take negative 1 plus 5.84 divided by 2. So do that. Negative 1 plus 5.84 is 4.84. 4.84 divided by 2 gives you 2.42. Okay, the next time through, we're going to take negative 1 minus 5.84 and then divide it by 2. So that gives you negative 6.84. Negative 6.84 divided by 2 is negative 3.42. And so our two answers are 2.42 and negative 3.42. Okay, so don't think that those are always going to work out perfect. Sometimes you will have decimals when you take those square roots, and so this was just our first example of seeing one like that. All right, so you should be able to take a quadratic equation now and use that quadratic formula to come up with your answers.